Dictionary of Emotions in Wartime by Elena Astaseva. Panic.
I fly into my apartment and shout, "Matvey, quick! Run to the store, we need to buy food."
Auntie, we have tons of food. I bought potatoes, there's more than enough for 2 days.
Don't you get it? War has begun. What if the stores close for a week or a month? He can't imagine that. Nothing has ever happened in his 21 years that would have stopped him going to the store at any time he wanted to buy whatever he wanted.
Fear.
We're being bombed. I hear the sound of shells outside the window. I Google what to do.
Hide in your apartment between two windowless walls. No doors, no windows.
I run around the apartment. I don't have any walls without windows or doors. Even the bathroom has a window. The corridor has 3 doors, and one of those has glass in it. What idiotic planning. Maybe best to run to the basement? I go to Google again.
Do not hide in basements under any circumstance if there is no water source, air conditioning, and a toilet.
We have none of that in our basement. I lie down on the sofa. Nothing's going to help me anyway.
Hunger.
You have to stand 3 hours in line to buy anything. But what do you buy? Buy meat and freeze it? But if a shell strikes the electric grid, there will be no electricity, and the meat will go bad. Macaroni and grains? But what are you going to eat if they turn off the gas? You need something that doesn't have to be prepared. Cookies? They sold out long ago. There are none on store shelves. Try out some bread, maybe? But there's no bread either. I look at the empty shelves in confusion. Got to come home with something. Something we can eat, sitting in a basement while bombs land on my apartment house.
Cleaning.
I hate dust. I really should vacuum the place. But what if the apartment is bombed? Then why the wasted effort? What if they evacuate us and we have to leave immediately? No point mopping the floors. Does one need to clean an apartment in wartime? Does anyone know what the rules are on this?
Betrayal.
I didn't understand immediately what was going on. Why were my cultured friends from Russia mumbling their abstract phrases such as,
"I oppose war,"
instead of saying,
"My government is committing a crime. It has been seized by evil forces. I am in despair and I don't know what to do"?
just 3 people wrote that to me. That's probably quite a few, given that it seems every 4th inhabitant of Russia is not only not against the war with Ukraine, but even happy with it. I treated citizens of the Russian Federation like living people, but they turned out to be zombies. What's most annoying is that my friends who quit communicating with Russians and switched over to the Ukrainian language after 2014 turned out to be right. I wanted to be tolerant. I thought people were not to blame, it's all Putin. I didn't watch Russian TV. I didn't know what was happening there.
Exchanges with a Russian girlfriend.
How are you, Elena?
Alive. The city is occupied. There's no way out.
You asked me to write, who among us Russians support you? I don't understand. How could anyone not support you?
I do believe that not everyone in the Russian Federation is a zombie.
I have a couple of friends in the Ukraine. Some have been very aggressive, some have quit writing altogether. My friend in Kiev saw some rocket out her window, and she unleashed an incredible tirade of aggressive accusations at me in a PM, as if I were personally to blame for that.
I understand her. When your home is being bombed, you feel hatred.
I myself would like to understand.
There are many dead and wounded. Kharkov is destroyed. Kiev is constantly being bombed. Many of my friends are refugees now.
I couldn't have imagined something like this happening in the 21st century.
I'm afraid to go out of the house. Lines for bread are 2 hours long.
Sanctions against our country are laughable. Half of Russia consists of backwater towns. As I imagine it, grannies in chicken coops. So what's not working out there? Apple Pay? I'm going to go feed the chickens.
It's like finding myself in a film about war. It's a nightmare. You go to bed and you fear your home will be bombed that night. There's nowhere to buy food or medicine. And when you write about all this, your Russian friends answer that it's fake news. What do you think? How do I feel?
The situation is complicated by the fact I've had COVID for 2 weeks. I am constantly on different pills, wiped out entirely, and that makes it seem as though everything is a dream, and I'll wake up any minute now. Such insane things can't possibly happen in dreams.
I wish I could wake up too.
A blockade is coming upon us too. It's informational for now, but an Iron Curtain is not far in the future. But I want to know the truth. I want to see it with open eyes, even if it frightens me. That's why I wrote you directly.
Did you see the video of Kiev and Kharkov being bombed? That's all true. You need not doubt that.
I'm afraid to watch Ukrainian channels. I can't stand so much pain and tears.
Do you think we can stand it?
My husband received an official summons. He was very surprised. It said something like, just in case you must be blah, blah, blah. He's like that, okay? He's strange.
Your friends and relatives will kill our people, and vice versa. Then you'll start to feel hatred.
Don't worry. My husband couldn't kill a cockroach.
If Putin orders him to, he will.
Hatred.
When you hear the sound of a shell flying at your house, at first you feel fear, then hatred. Hatred for whoever did it, for all of Russia, for all its inhabitants, without exception. When there is silence outside the window, your brain kicks in, and only then can you rationally think about things. Until you hear the sound of a shell outside your window, you will not understand what hatred is.
Love.
I have a friend. Well, not so much a friend. Relationship is complicated. He lives near Kyiv. I live in Kherson. We rarely see each other. He used to text me every morning.
How are you, kid? As badass as ever?
Now I write to him every morning. How are you there today? Any shooting? Are you still alive? We had decided that each of us was on our own. No obligations, an open relationship. Now we discuss how we will live together when the war is over.
You will work, and I will stay home and cook.
He jokes. The hell, I say. I'll lie on the couch and read all day, and every evening I'll retell the stories of books to you. He wanted to come to Kherson on Women's Day, March 8th, but the war began February 24th, and now I have no idea whether we'll get together or not. I'm afraid one day he won't pick up the phone. The place where he is now is under heavy fire.
Exchanges with a Ukrainian girlfriend.
A woman was killed in the next house. I have no windows anymore. We're escaping now.
Maybe someone will help us get out too, but where?
I had no plans to leave until an hour ago. Now, everything has changed. I took almost nothing. The cat is howling. Lena, pack your bags. Don't repeat my mistakes.
What city are you in now?
Rubezhny, 15 kilometers from Severodonetsk. Severodonetsk is being shelled heavily. My job is gone. Shells keep hitting our neighborhood. I've already written off our apartment building. How are you doing?
We're under occupation. No food or medicine have arrived in the city since the war began. We're threatened with starvation if this continues. For now, we're finishing up what we bought before the war. The city authority has not changed yet. The Ukrainian flag is still flying, but the mayor was ordered to forbid the residents to do several things. Drive a car, go out after 8 p.m., leave the city.
Here, they have begun killing the leaders of the territorial defense. I have no job anymore. Shells keep hitting my block. I already said goodbye to our building. I want to leave. I don't know what to do with the cat. Basically, I'm totally confused. It's not so easy to leave because of the shelling, but I'm scared as fuck. After a shell fell 20 meters from my house, I'm still shaking.
An entire family here was shot up in their car on their way out of the city.
I want to escape, but my brain is overloaded. Home, mom, the cat. To say nothing about the fact that my boyfriend will be mobilized, that's obvious. He will stay here. He plans to join the territorial defense. Unfortunately, we aren't married. We put it off all summer. First we remodeled our apartment, then we traveled, and then we were swamped with work. I really didn't want to get married officially. I thought, who needs it? But now, how will I look for him after if I am not his wife? I only hope he survives. And what's the point of me staying here if all of the men are being conscripted? Our apartment is unlikely to survive. But what about our cat? I can't just leave him on the street.
Irritation.
I read the posts of those who managed to escape. They're in Europe now, safe. And I am very happy for them. I follow their stories, some in Poland, some in Moldova, and some in Sweden. I understand it's difficult for them abroad, but it irritates me for some reason. It's the desperation of being trapped.
Guilt.
I feel guilty when I read about Kharkov and Mariupol because these cities are being bombed heavily. Our Kherson didn't suffer much. A shopping center, 2 apartment buildings, a few schools. We're kind of outside of things because everyone else is fighting while we are under occupation. This is the guilt of the soldier who has been taken prisoner.
Messages from friends.
I've had no contact with Mother since the morning of March 2nd. She is in Mariupol. All communications are cut. It's war. All I could find out as of today, no one has had gas, electricity, or communications and food for a long time. Her apartment was bombed. People cook porridge on a bonfire in the courtyard. I hope she is alive. I believe she is fine. I'm waiting. Waiting is very hard. I'm powerless, but I believe.
Today I crawled home from the hunt with 3 loaves of bread and 2 packages of oatmeal. My sister, dad, and aunt conducted a special operation on apples and brought home a pack. There are no fruits and I need vitamins. I stood in line as explosions went on around us. Fuck it. A kilometer from my house, they're digging some kind of ditch. At the airport, 4 kilometers away, we hear explosions at night. I spend all day on the internet, probably like everyone else. I'll give birth soon. The main thing is to have access to the maternity ward and medicines. People write every day from different cities and countries. Come here. Oh, more noble madmen. We are under occupation. Where am I going to go? I keep kicking myself for not leaving. Not for my sake, for my future baby. I'm very pessimistic about the end of all this shit. That's life. One day at a time.
Day 12 of the war. How are you doing? Everything is fine here. Planes flying over, explosions. My legs are killing me from standing in lines for food and animal feed. We have enough to eat for another 5 days. Then, for a couple more days, we will eat pickled cucumbers and drink fruit compote. I'm exhausted. I try to read, but I can't, especially when explosions keep distracting me from my book. I'm counting on the army. I donated all my free money to them in order to hasten our victory.
Choices.
What can you die of during a war? If a shell hits you, it rips you to pieces. If a shell hits your apartment building, you can be crushed under the rubble. When a shell hits, a building might catch fire. You might burn up or die of asphyxiation. You might be shot in your car as you try to leave town. You might die of hunger sitting in a shelter because you can't go out for provisions. You might die of hunger because there's a blockade and no food is delivered to your town. You might die of thirst if your water system is damaged and there is no water. You might die of illness because medicines are not being delivered to your city.
Time.
As soon as the war began, we said,
It will last a few days, and then it will be over.
then,
It will all be finished in 3 to 4 days.
then,
We'll know what to expect in 2 weeks.
2 weeks passed, and now I hear.
This war was planned to last a month.
For some reason, I have bad premonitions.
Weather.
As I awoke this morning, I heard thunder in my sleep. I thought, it's going to rain. Then I came to fully and realized those were shells exploding.
Kherson, March 12, 2022.
Night. Pregnant wife enters kitchen, does not turn on light. Russian soldier sits at the table.
Fuck. Is that you?
Who else would it fucking be?
What are you doing?
What do you fucking think? Don't turn on the light. I'm not here.
Is that so? And where are you?
I'm lying near Chernihiv. Fuck it. God fucking damn it.
What the fuck am I supposed to do? I'm having a fucking baby soon.
Don't ask me. I'm not fucking here. I don't know what the fucking to do.
So why did you come?
Fuck all knows. Must say goodbye.
Something to eat? Drink?
The fuck am I gonna drink? I'm not here.
Oh.
Just don't cry.
The wife cries.
Fuck it.
The wife cries.
Don't cry. I'll fucking hit you.
I won't!
The wife stops crying.
What's happening out there?
No sugar.
That's fucked.
So the Banderites got you?
Who the fuck else?
Oh, bastards. What did it look like? Tell me.
I'm in a tank. What do I see?
How will we know when they will come for us? How do we recognize them?
I'd like to see him myself, but I'm not here.
If you're not, you're not. Quit fucking repeating it. If you're not, you're not.
A silence. Their son comes in.
Dad? Is that you?
Get the fuck out of here. Your dad's not here.
Don't say that. It's a forbidden word combination. Did you do your homework?
He's in kindergarten.
Oh, fuck. Forgot. Go to bed. Or I'll get my belt.
Are you at war, Dad?
What the fuck are you talking about?
I'll put you in the corner. You can't say things like that.
You did a fucking job. You did a fucking hell of a job raising your son.
So where were you, asshole?
Defending the homeland. Ever hear that?
A silence. Again.
Shame I can't drink. At least we celebrated Soldiers' Day on February 23rd. Thanks for small favors.
I can drink.
You're gonna have a baby.
It doesn't fucking care.
My mother drank too. Nothing good came of it. How's Dad?
The wife drinks.
The bastard won't die. But that's good now. We'll live on his pension. Will they pay me for you?
They should. Ask at the base.
The wife drinks a second time. The doorbell rings.
Was that in the middle of the night?
Probably came from me. Just don't turn on the light.
The wife opens the door. An FSB agent is there.
Is he here already?
Sitting in the kitchen. He's not drinking.
You realize he's not there.
I do. What of it?
What do you fucking think? Sign here.
I'm not signing anything. I'll sign when I get my compensation.
Don't talk back to him. He'll throw you in prison.
You don't exist. You're not here. What compensation?
I have a small child. I support my grandfather. I'm having a baby soon.
The FSB agent looks at the table again.
You still don't exist.
But then what about me?
You're nobody.
There's no one there.
Survivor Syndrome by Andrii Bondarenko. The end.
Every one of us was killed already that morning.
We are no longer what we were then.
We died.
On February 24th of the year 2022.
A neighboring country killed us all.
The old world went up in flames and smoke, splintered and disintegrated.
Hundreds, thousands, millions of our worlds disappeared, destroyed forever, irreversibly.
That week I decided to go on a date. Winter was coming to an end, but it was still gray and cold. I wanted to finally change something. We made the date for the day after tomorrow, February 24th, the year of 2022. We were to meet in the center of the town, sit at a cafe, walk the streets. That day, the day after tomorrow, never came. Something else entirely came about and ruined that day. You think you want to go for a walk, There was no city in which to meet and have a coffee. There were no more streets. Something else entirely happened. Other lives of other people now will have to become acquainted again. Set a new date. Meet at another time. Everything will have to be reassembled, piece by piece. And the pieces themselves will be completely new.
But when will that be?
Who will I be?
Who will we be?
Where will we be?
What will our purpose be?
The apocalypse has come. Everything that was is no longer. What remained were vestiges, shadows. We used to watch TV series, drink beer and cognac.
We stayed out late at coffee houses.
Visited friends.
Bought paperback books.
Hugged.
Talked about art.
Played cards.
Laughed. Danced to music on our phones.
We went to the movies, drinking beer and eating nuts.
This all disappeared one gray, cold morning, swept into the dark abyss by the sound of an air siren.
This is how worlds disappear.
Like a day that ended and never came again.
Like a flower that clamped its petals shut under a gust of wind and never opened again.
Like a laptop suddenly disconnected from an outlet.
Like a sun that set in the west but never rose again in the east. Like a man stabbed in the heart from behind.
This is how worlds disappear. Like a light bulb going out, like water dripping from a bath, like eyes being shut on a dead man's corpse.
Our world was no better than a light bulb, just as fragile and finite. So it turned out. Our world was imperfect. It was alive.
It was killed.
The apocalypse now has come. There is no fear. He whom we feared is long gone now. Traces, remnants, shadows. We have retreated to another side, in Atlantis beneath the surface of the sea. We will see it, but the image grows weaker. Our life is now a graveyard of all the plans, desires, and aspirations that we had before February 24th.
In the year of 2022.
We now live in a world which our world no longer exists.
How can that be?
It just is. That happens too. Forests through which we used to wander are mined and devastated by tanks. Bridges we used to take to visit our relatives are destroyed. Our relatives are dead or gone crazy. Friends are held captive in captured cities or have left for where they never had any intention of going. Theaters are bombed to dust. Theater actors guard checkpoints with machine guns in hand.
What kind of world is this?
This is the world of war. And what is war? It is something that cannot be, ever. But it is.
How can that be? It cannot be.
We live in a world that cannot be. What could not happen has happened. The unspeakable has happened. The unreal has happened.
Are we alive at all, we who survived?
Who am I now? How did I survive those first days? I remember little. Those days are buried under some big, impenetrable pillow. All we did was wave our arms as if they were wings, so as not to fall into the abyss that our lives had become. It turns out we had wings, those of us whom we now have become.
I still don't understand. Where are we? We're in different places at the same time, like ghosts. Like foggy clouds, we fly wherever our thoughts lead us, to where our friends, family, and loved ones now sit in basements, shuddering from rocket attacks, or just frozen in fear for someone's life. We now hover over all of Ukraine like ghosts. Our bodies obediently remain where we left them. We are only half our bodies, or a third. We are carried here and there by the invisible winds of war.
Our bodies are like children. We command them to be polite and obey their elders. Sit still, hold this backpack with documents, carry us onward, until our thoughts and souls carry us to those who are dying beneath the bombs.
Where are we? Our places and spaces have been replaced, spread out, confused. Train stations function, but they're no longer train stations. Cafes function, but they're not cafes. People sit and drink, but that is no longer drinking.
A drunken friend called me recently. He was sitting with another friend. His friend had had a bottle. They both got drunk. My friend got very drunk. Sat there drunk and happy, listening to music on his phone, remembering funny stories. And then he went home and suddenly woke up. He remembered everything. Dark, empty streets surrounded him on all sides, and his windows were taped shut. A territorial defense patrol stood under the bridge. My friend called me.
What should I do?
He asked.
I was drunk, I had fun, and suddenly I woke up. There's a war going on. It's very scary. There's a patrol under the bridge. Why did I get drunk? What's so fun about getting together with music and funny stories if there's a war going on?
Don't worry about it, I said. Just hang up and go home, quick. Curfew starts in 5 minutes. You'll be stopped by a patrol, and you're drunk.
Damn,
He said.
curfew! And I was happy half an hour ago when I was drunk.
Go home quick, I said. And don't drink anymore.
I won't. Fuck. I won't.
He said and hung up. Those who have no tomorrow should not drink vodka. It's pointless. After all, your hangover will come today. It won't be postponed till tomorrow morning. We have no tomorrow.
There is only one big, swollen today.
Heavy gray, swollen clouds spread over the entire horizon in all directions, filling all the cracks. No matter how much you drink, you'll still come back to this today. Nothing lies behind the gray clouds. The road to the future is gone and must be found again, just as we look for
What?
nothing. Finding your future is finding your future, nothing more. Who knows how to look for it? We must learn this from zero, from scratch, from the emptiness of the day's eternal gloom, just as we learn to fly over the abyss by the power of wings we previously did not have.
Hanging over the abyss bifurcates or even trifurcates you.
I went for a walk. It was around mid-March. A bright, high, dazzling blue sky. The warmth of the sun falling on shrunken faces, caressing them like a mother's hand. A light breeze blows. Children's laughter wafts in from somewhere, and your body responds. It responds to this spring around you. Your gait relaxes. A faint smile appears on your lips.
But it's just your body. You yourself don't respond.
Smile on one side of your mouth, sadness on the other.
Like an ancient mask.
On the one hand, you absorb spring, but on the other, it is not spring. It is a battlefield, a fiery death. Fighters with machine guns now run beneath the big blue dazzling sky. The warm sun illuminating an enemy tank hiding near a ruined cottage. A car with refugees is shot up beneath this sun. People buried under concrete walls are dying in the shadow of this sun. Tanks, helicopters, cars, people, the earth are all burning beneath this sun with a transparent fire. As such, you see around you two suns, two skies, two springs. You are here and there all at the same time. You are bifurcated, trifurcated. For some part of you is neither here nor there, but hangs in this moment over the dark abyss, the abyss of the apocalypse. You now have 3 heads, for you must watch 2 suns and 1 abyss at the same time. But you have just 2 hands, and they must carry you like wings. Your world is destroyed. You are dead. You are flying somewhere, a stranger in every world on which the sun now shines. You still breathe, but you know not what that means. I breathe. So what?
Am I still breathing?
Am I breathing for now?
Am I breathing already?
Did I inhale?
Did I exhale?
Is this a pause?
Or is it the end? Or is it the beginning?
Who can say?
At this very moment, the Ukrainian mathematician Konstantin Olmazov is sitting in a Russian prison. He specializes in additive combinatorics, a field of mathematics that studies finite sets and their relationships. When, on February 24th,
In the year 2022,
one finite set in which this was currently located attacked the other finite set to which this belonged. Konstantin Almazov could not believe in such a new relationship between these two sets, nor could he accept it as a fact of mathematics or as a fact of life. And just 2 days later, he both believed and wished to escape the finite set in which he was located at the time, but it was too late. And on his way to the bus, he was arrested because he was recognized. Some element of his present finite set handed him over to the police, and the police arrested him for the simple reason that he wished to escape from the finite set which he was located. Although that was no crime, and yet they still imprisoned him because he had said out loud that one finite set was wrong to attack another finite set. Now, Almazov sits in a prison cell hanging over the dark abyss. He sits and sits and sits. He sits some more, then sits more still.
Sitting.
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 And sitting. But stop! No more. No more sitting. His hands could bear it no more. Konstantin Almazov, a Ukrainian mathematician detained and imprisoned in Moscow for trying to go home, committed suicide while in a prison cell.
At least, that's what the news said.
His wings could not bear the weight.
More precisely, they were clipped.
Thousands are falling into the abyss at the moment that I write these words. Why do I write about the mathematician Konstantin Almazov? Probably because he had been there, in someone else's finite set. It is much more frightening than here.
Although, I don't know that.
It's scary everywhere.
At the precise moment that I write these words, people in Mariupol are praying not to die deaths as horrible as their neighbor have already died. They want to die instantly. They have no doubts that they will fall into the black, dark pit to which they currently cling. Their spring right now consists of nights spent living underground, without heat, without food, without water. Their spring is days of death under bombs, days of burying corpses beneath the entry to a high-rise building.
The apocalypse continues. The apocalypse is constant.
Apocalypse now.
Today.
Already.
There is no tomorrow.
My world is gone. I have no sense of life. I am carried away by an invisible wind. My body is as obedient as that of a child, sitting in a safe space, in a basement, or between two load-bearing walls, carrying a backpack with documents and money. With obedience and fear, my body waits for me to return from the fiery spaces of spring, where people are dying, people dear to me, though I don't know them all, people who no longer have the strength to fly above the black abyss, whose limbs have been cut off, who fluttered like wings to the bitter end in the emptiness of the apocalypse.
But arms and hands are not wings.
Why do I go back? Why do I still see the sky in spring? Why do I hear the air raid alarm and go outside to buy bread, cabbage, and tomato paste? Why does the sun still caress me like my mother's warm hand on my face? Why does the right corner of my mouth rise in a strange half smile? I have no idea. This is a strange thing. One of those that is already happening in the apocalypse. For example, no longer are there kilometers between Lviv and Mariupol. Kilometers, there are corpses. The distance between Lviv and Mariupol is 1,250 corpses of civilians, and that is only according to the official statistics today, which always underestimate everything, so as not to tease the apocalypse, so as not to look it in the eye. In fact, there are many more corpses. We understand that perfectly well, but I do not tell that to my body, which obediently sits where I tell it to sit. The body does not need to know everything, but I know a terrible secret. We are not alive. We are flying over an abyss. For our world was killed, and we are carried here and there by invisible wings blowing between life and death. I can move my body where distances are still counted in kilometers, where it is still spring and not a fiery battlefield. But the hot winds will reach me there too. I shall see the dark abyss every time I close my eyes, even if I just blink. for a moment.
My world is gone.
Sleep, body, sleep. It's not easy for you either. You truly suspect something. After all, you smile with just one corner of your mouth. You wake up every day at dawn because you hear the ghostly sound of a siren. You do not taste food. You fear blinking so as not to see the darkness I do not tell you about. Dear body, so that you won't forget that you must breathe. For I have forgotten about that for a very long time. Because on February 24th
of the year 2022,
I found myself in a place where there is no air, where there is no atmosphere. It had all disappeared, as if I had never existed. The sky went black as an abyss, even in daytime, let alone evening and night.
The first and last panic attack in my life came when, on the 4th day of the war, I returned home in the evening and looked up at the dark sky and did not see a sky there. At all. How could a sky be there? Were there a sky there, Russian bombs and missiles could not fly through it. It would hold them back. But they do fly there. So there must be no sky. It's gone. No world, no sky. What could it cling to? There are no iron pillars, no green forests, no cherry orchards. I stopped, puzzled. My breathing stopped. I was bent low like grass, only my legs moved on, and in that way, I did not fall, but rolled on. When I rolled up to the wall of my house, my body began to breathe again, but I do not.
This combination is not holds a certain magic for me. I repeated it over and over so that at least something will be. If you repeat is not 1,000 times, it is as if there is something there, or at least some crumb of dust that you can hold on to.
I love street sparrows and even pigeons. I feel solidarity with them. If they live, so can I. If the sun shines for them, then maybe it does for me. Maybe I'll catch their sun if I don't have my own. Maybe their sky will cover me a little. At least a little.
Sparrow sky, cover me and all those I love. Think about and remember all who fly with me into the black abyss. We are like those sparrows. We fly, although we do not know how. We are like those sparrows. We die by the thousands in the dust and ashes, homeless, restless. Sparrow sky, chub, chub, chub.
Memories of those who were and died still swirl about me like dust. But there are fewer and fewer of them. I don't remember living the first 3 days of the war. An impenetrable pillow. That is, I know how. I sat in front of a laptop screen, unable to break away from the news. I posted hysterical appeals on Facebook. I called people. I questioned and passed on important information, forced myself to fall asleep, listened to the siren at dawn, started to read, and immediately threw away the book. Experienced despair and love. I know it all, but I do not remember it. What about who I was before the war? I know him, but I don't remember him. All I know is that it was someone else. He went to the bathroom differently, lived in my house differently, spoke differently, looked out of the window differently. He was, and he disappeared. God be with him. I haven't time for him now.
Mariupol.
Bucha,
Gostomel.
Irpin.
Vasilkiv,
Sumy,
Akhtirka,
Chernihiv,
Isyam.
Popazna,
Volnovaka.
Krakiv.
Gerson,
Mykolaiv,
Bashtanka,
Voznesensk,
Makarov.
Chernobyl,
Energodar.
Donsk.
Lugansk,
Crimea,
Bakhchisarai,
Dizenkoy.
Simferopol,
Sevastopol.
Melitopol.
Berdyansk,
Kramatorsk.
Slavansk.
These are the words I remember now, which I will not forget. I will not forget anything or anyone. Nothing and no one. Nothing that has happened in the dark and in the fire. This is my sole bridge across the abyss now, and without me already. Therefore, yes, I whisper these words before bed.
Mariupol.
Bucha,
Gostomel.
Irpen.
Vasylkiv.
Sumy.
Aktirka.
Cherny.
Popasna.
Krakiv.
Kherson.
Mykolaiv.
Bashtanka.
These are word cities. In them live all the people who have died, who disappeared, who were left homeless. This is my geography now. I do not know what will happen next. I know nothing as my friends, the street sparrows, know nothing. But I am sure of one thing. We will forget nothing. Nothing that happened, ever. We shall remember to the depths of our bones and blood, until we're calloused and full of holes. To the sparrow sky, as to those who remember have nothing but this to remember, from whom everything else was taken away.
Thus shall we traipse through the apocalypse now.
This is not a memory of us who came before, of those who lived, died, and perished with the old world. God be with them. It is a memory of wings, love, fearlessness, and burning pain. It is the memory of what happened when there was nothing left, when we were ghosts, when the dead were alive, and the living were dead. The memory is what we are now.
To hold it, we must build a new world.
And we will build it.
And there will be a new sky over it.
We shall remember everyone killed, every house destroyed.
Every street destroyed.
Every motionless face.
We shall watch TV series.
Drink beer and cognac.
Sit late into the night at coffee houses.
We shall visit friends, buy paperback books.
Hug each other.
Talk about art.
Play cards.
Laugh.
Dance to music on our phones.
Go to the movies and drink beer with nuts.
But before that, I'll go on a date.
And it will not be me.
Not the one who survives.
It will be the one who will be.
Who will live.
Who will remember.
Who will love.
Who ultimately will despair. The beginning.
Call Them by Their Names, by Tetyana Kitsenko.
When I was a teenager, my family lived in the small town of Zdanivska in the Donetsk region. The city of Zdaniv was 200 kilometers away on the shores of the Sea of Azov. As such, confused tourists heading for Zdaniv regularly arrived at our bus station in Zdanivka. In 1989, Zdaniv was renamed Mariupol, and we seriously considered whether we might change the name Zdanivska to Mariupolivka. This never happened. But in 2017, Marshal Zhukov Street, where I lived in Kyiv, was renamed Kuban of Ukraine. Around this same time, the street named for the January uprising of 1918 was renamed in honor of Ivan Mazepa, while the Moscow Prospect was renamed after Stepan Bandera. In those years, there were still many renamings going on within the framework of decommunization. Villages, streets, metro stations, and at first it was confusing and annoying. But the new names have taken root because they're ours. Honestly, I would rename many other things.
Soviet champagne. Zhiuli beer. Russian cheese.
Being a rational person, I would advise these manufacturers to change their names urgently. Otherwise, their products will just spoil in warehouses because they get stuck in everyone's throat. As I've been writing this text,
Russian cheese was renamed anti-Russian.
then there are a number of cases where renaming is a debatable issue. For example, Putin for Hitler. After a detailed study of the issue, I don't believe they should be equated. The Nazi leader may have been a bad artist, but he was an artist. He knew style and design and had taste. Before plunging his people into an abyss, Herr Adolf managed to paint a convincing picture of the future. Finally, in defeat, he had the courage to lay hands on himself. Putin has neither style nor taste. He says not a word about the future, only about the great past, and not even of the Soviet period, but of the days when toilets were a hole in the ground. You find yourself listening to the demented delusion of this old man, and you realize the hell he will lay hands on himself. Comparing Putin to Hitler is an insult to Hitler. Putin is a monkey playing with a nuclear button while sitting on a gas tap. For the safety of everyone, this three-pronged entity must be disassembled forever. To be honest, I didn't believe until the last moment that Putin's Russia would attack Ukraine. But when my husband and I leaped up at 5 a.m. on February 24 from the explosion of cruise missiles, we knew what was happening without the news reports. Was this special operation a conflict or a crisis? No. Not one of these words came to mind, and if such diplomatic definitions are rinsed of their hypocrisy, you'll have the old standard. War.
War is when you're going west through Gostomel, and a downed helicopter catches fire right above your head, and you rejoice because it belongs to the enemy.
It is when you sleep in the bathtub at night, wake from the bombs and feel the walls vibrating.
It is when you live in the subway for 4 weeks, know how to distinguish grad rockets from bombing strikes, but don't know if your house survived.
Also, when your relatives from Russia say that it's all fake. How did it happen? Calling things by their proper names became a civic feat in Russia, Belarus, and a few countries in the West. Why such inflated criteria for the truth? It seems so obvious to declare a war. Criminals, and heroes. It is important to name the number of dead, captured, and even those Russian soldiers who refused to return to Russia. After we try them for their crimes they committed, let them rebuild what they destroyed. Then maybe they can remain with permanent resident status, if they're willing to learn Ukrainian. Of course, everyone in Ukraine will understand Russian, but will a Russian understand anything here? I remember in 2007, a journalist from St. Petersburg, Sasha, came to work in Kyiv for a Russian language publication. For a couple weeks, he complained how difficult it was for him. And the last straw was when Sasha went to do an interview and spent an hour looking for Red Banner or Krasnoznamenaya Street, not even guessing that he was walking on it.
After all, the street signs bore a radically different name, Chervono Praporna, that is, Red Banner Street in Ukrainian. Incidentally, it is now called Pirogovsky Lane.
Russian soldiers thought that if they got into trouble, they could just blend in with the crowd at any Ukrainian city. But we all remember how the locals, seeing a man with a shaved head and wearing someone else's clothes, shouted at him,
"Hey, say Palyanitsia!"
That is bread loaf in Ukrainian. But a Russian simply can't say this because Ukrainian requires different adjustments of the oral apparatus. Language has become a password, an identifier, a system of recognizing our own from the intruder. But here's what I think. Even if a Russian understands the language, will he really understand Ukrainians? It's not even a matter of the meaning of the words, but what stands behind them. Take, for example, our leading national virtue,
Sincerity.
It's not just a matter of being frank. It's an odd fusion of cordiality and breadth of soul mixed with frank honesty. The ability to call things by their proper names. I would require exams to prove people know such things. By the way, about names, I've noticed one interesting nuance. It's not so recognizable in everyday life because I speak both Ukrainian and Russian. But when corresponding in English, I have noticed feeling irritation when foreign colleagues address me not as Tetyana, but rather using the Russian version. My dear friends, Tetyana is something else entirely. The difference of one letter is enough to contain an entire worldview.
Relocation by Maksym Kurochkin.
Dear Fritz, I'm writing to you from a very strange place. I'm in a train car with, get this now, Jews who are being relocated. You know how I feel about these matters of bloodlines, this ramshackle toy of our romantics. But believe me, in this car that is intended to transport animals, I avoid the phrase of cattle car so as not to wallow in melodrama. You too would also become an anti-Semite. I have no access to such ameliorating circumstances. This is because, as I recently learned, I am a Jew after all. And having no inclination to commit suicide, I am bound to limit myself to the role of nascent misanthrope. I apologize for the last phrase. It began to sour towards the middle, but the lighting in here is atrocious, and I'm writing almost by feel with no possibility of rereading or correcting for style. I think you've understood my notion. There is a veritable hell of human themes around me, all of them orbiting around questions of food and waste avoidance. One conjugal couple that failed to pack sufficient provisions has brought down such universal indignation upon themselves that even die-hard enemies, the editor of the Theatrical Thought and the editor of the Evening Review, have united against them. The humor of the situation is enhanced by the presence of a handful of unweaned infants. Their inevitable cries firmly shift the general mood in the public towards the direction of the Triassic Age. We have not yet resorted to egg laying, but according to my calculations, we are becoming quite equivalent to Homo heidelbergensis. Fritz, explain it to me. What is headquarters thinking? Isn't it clear that anyone encountering such attitudes will subsequently carry the seed of doubt about all that is German? I support some of the military and civil measures, but this all can't last forever. Sooner or later, we will have to live with these people, and they will remind us, you see, I still feel I am German, of all the absurdities and mistakes of resettlement. You should hear the local conversations. All of a sudden, everyone has turned into H.G. Wells, although only yesterday, they had never read anything but detective stories. I am tired of refuting the rumors of warehouses full of lethal gas and electric furnaces supposedly designed to burn Jewish corpses. Yes, that's what they're saying. At the very first stop, I shall attempt to talk with the officer who is escorting the train. By a few of his mannerisms, I've recognized in him an educated, well-meaning individual. I think it would be proper if, for example, he were to punish a few of those with especially zealous imaginations. It's in our common interest. We can't give in to the baobabs from a book that neither you nor I like. Fritz, press upon your colleagues. I know you know many among the top brass, and that you have their ear. Here is a list of what must be done, without question. 1, eliminate the rude behavior at boarding time. As an old Freudian, I understand that irritation at one's own inability to improve the situation via accommodation lies at the root of any shout. But no compensation can justify the words of "climb in, you shit," directed by some young Hauptmann at an utterly flustered girl. Believe me, everyone is well aware that train cars are worth their weight in gold in wartime. No one expects a special comfort. Still, one must not forget the elementary grimaces of politeness. 2, label baggage carefully. If it is impossible to ensure that bags travel in the same car with their owners, there are reasons for this, I'm sure, and they are probably reasonable. Then markings must be made, employing a unified system, using continuous numbering. As it is now, everyone marks their bags as best they can, and confusion and conflicts are inevitable upon arrival. 3, conduct explanatory work. In fact, this is of utmost importance. Everything else pales by comparison. The presence of a person who is empowered to communicate and explain is absolutely crucial. 4, don't lose people. Let me explain by example. A barely literate Pole was appointed head of our car. Everyone among the elite here is offended. It will require serious effort later to return them to the ranks of the builders of the new Germany. What prevented you from defining a true hierarchy? One has the sense that your reliance on the lowest common denominator is a matter of the lower ranks taking revenge for their own oppressed positions. 5. I won't even touch on supply issues. There is no supply. The breakdown is so glaring that it's probably an exception rather than a systematic problem. I see no point in discussing particulars. 6. Discuss plans ahead of time. Provide at least a general understanding of future settlements. The time wasted in wailing and pessimism in the train cars could be spent reflecting upon ways of settling in a new residence. I understand you have a unified plan, but killing initiative is unproductive. Why not talk, as our flappy-eared sergeant major would say? Do you remember him? 7. In any unclear situation, make theater. This is a universal principle. There are enough specialists in our car to assemble a full-fledged troupe. Pointless nervous fear could be avoided if people were busy choosing a repertoire or preparing a concert. My own experience tells me that theater can eat up an infinite amount of time, labor, and even lives. Moreover, it suits those who tend to fade in the absence of histrionics. In a word, I am an ardent supporter of theater as a response to all of life's catastrophes. Theater is like a bone monkey paw for those in power. It scratches when their itches strike. Theater for everyone. After all, even a good old theatrical spat is more productive than the atmosphere in which we currently find ourselves. 8. There must always be water. This is important. 9. Don't allow incidents of death. This undermines trust. 10. Beware of humor. I don't mean to say that everyone here laughs, but I often find it funny when I recall the speeches of the top brass and what that has degenerated into now. It would take but 1 minute in our train car, time enough for you to sense its smells and moral atmosphere, in order to realize the utter intellectual inconsistency of some of our party leaders. I am sure Hitler would not welcome the reputation that his agents and their indifference to their work provided. I nearly crossed out that last paragraph. It was just my turn to stand by the window. We entered the gates of a transit camp, and I read the inscription above the gate. Work sets you free. That is dignified. There is nothing in it that would cause a laughter attack. One senses that they entrusted an intelligent, cultured employee to come up with that phrase. How pleasant it is when something in our Reich changes for the better.
My Terra by Liudmyla Tymoshenko.
There is a scene in Gone with the Wind, the funeral of Gerald, Scarlett's father. Before closing the coffin, Will asks Scarlett to go into the house, saying she is pregnant and might lose her child in the heat. The old woman accompanying her says,
He just didn't want you to hear the coffin being nailed shut. And he's right. Remember, Scarlett, until you hear that sound, the person seems alive to you. But as soon as you hear, yes, it is the most frightening sound in the world. It is the sound of the end.
I was 12 years old when I read those lines. At that time, I lived with my grandmother Tanya in Avruch, in the Zhytomyr region of Ukraine. When I was 7 months old, my parents had sent me from North Kazakhstan, which is where I was born, to live with her. My father served in the Strategic Rocket Forces. What does that mean? When rockets were placed on combat duty, they had to be kept under constant control. They were guided via underground command posts, and they were called
Satan warheads, the largest nuclear rockets of the time.
There were 24 of them in my dad's garrison. Officers sat underground keeping constant watch over these rockets. Every officer on duty knew if he were to receive the order, he would have to press a button. There were 3 types of readiness.
Number 1 was constant combat readiness.
Whereby a green signal light was constantly on in the bunker.
Number 2 was increased combat readiness.
Which was accompanied by a blue light. The third was
engagement danger.
For this, a red light was lit, and the officer on duty would turn on all devices that eventually would direct the warheads toward their target. All that was left was to push the red button. The officer on duty knew that by pushing that button, he could destroy a city 10 times the size of Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined. I was sent from North Kazakhstan to live with my grandmother in Ukraine because the climate in Kazakhstan was not suitable for a 7-month-old child.
10 months of winter, the rest is summer.
As the locals joked. 40 below in winter plus 40 in summer. I was often ill. My older brother Sergei stayed with our parents. He, a 5-year-old boy, was very scared. Like all Soviet children living in such military bases, he feared nuclear war. At the age of 5, he knew perfectly well what
unauthorized behavior
was. This topic was constantly discussed among my parents, kindergarten teachers, neighbors, shop assistants, and even hairdressers and beauty shops. The officers on duty were usually men of strong endurance, an ironclad psyche. From time to time, however, their nerves might crack. The nerves they experienced in the control room staring at the color of the signal light made some of them go crazy. Mental aberrations like this had to be detected or foreseen in some way. Otherwise, this so-called unauthorized behavior might actually transpire. That is, if a duty officer realized he had the power to flatten planet Earth all on his own, he might succumb to the notion he could do anything he pleased. Such system failures might occur not only in a particular person's head, but also in the bunker's control system. There once was an incident when something went haywire and the red signal light came on completely by accident. While the officer on duty, sweating with animal terror, aimed the rocket at its target, the command center managed to issue the proper directives to rescind the order. I was not afraid of nuclear war because I lived with my grandmother. She ate dumplings with cherries in summer and mashed potatoes with gravy in winter. My grandmother took me sledding, drove me to see the New Year's tree, and every Victory Day on May 9th, we would attend the parade of flags, rejoicing at the peaceful sky over our heads and our victory over fascism. My grandfather died in 1958. During World War II, he fought on various fronts, repairing military aircraft. He met my grandmother in Germany, where, like many girls, she had been transported by train from Ukraine and forced to work in German factories. After the war, my grandmother and grandfather, along with my father's newborn older brother, Valery, named after test pilot Valery Chkalov, moved to a garrison in Belarus, in the city of Baranovich. When my dad, Victor, was 9 years old, his father died. Over the Easter holidays, Grandma went from Belarus to his native village in Zhytomyr region and got caught up in the tradition of going house to house.
This is when, on holidays from morning until night, villagers visit their neighbors and drink moonshine.
He then returned to his family in Baranovich and died of a stroke. He so missed my grandmother that, immediately upon arrival, he climbed up on top of her and his heart burst. He was 38 years old. My grandmother, my father, and his brother Valery remember the sounds of the nails being driven into the coffin. 8 months after my grandfather's death, grandmother decided to return to her relatives in Ukraine. She and her 2 sons were given a room in a communal house in the town of Avruch. Grandfather's family asked for permission to transport his body to his native village near Avruch, and to make this happen, Grandma sold her last valuable possession, a war trophy, a German accordion captured during the war. The coffin was dug up, covered with fir branches to hide the smell of the corpse, and was reburied in Grandpa's hometown cemetery. To this day, Dad can't smell Dad can't stand the smell of pine needles. Then my grandmother was given the house where I'd come to live from North Kazakhstan when I was 7 months old, and where I lived until I was 8, at which time my parents took me to Lvov. This red brick house was the happiest place I've ever known. On every school holiday, I flew there on wings. Actually, I traveled by way of Lvov-Lugansk Railway with a train station in Korostyn. I've always strongly associated the smell of jasmine growing near the house with the beginning of everlasting happiness. School would end on May 25th, and on May 26th, I would luxuriate in the smell of the white flowers from this bush. There would be 3 months of wonderful, carefree time ahead of me. That summer, I received a 2-volume edition of Gone with the Wind as a gift. This book was in short supply, and to get it, you had to turn in more than 20 kilos of waste paper. I imagined myself as Scarlett O'Hara, and I saw my grandmother's house as Tara. A whole new, wonderful world opened up before me. The parts about the war bored me, but I reread the parts about Scarlett and read many times over. When I read those lines about the sounds of the end, I was frightened for the first time in my life. I realized that one day my grandmother would die and I would hear those sounds. Fortunately, that didn't happen until I was 40. My grandmother outlived her husband by 53 years, and when she was buried in the family cemetery in the village, the locals said they still remembered Grandpa's coffin, which had been lined with fir branches. Grandma died at the age of 92. The woman who dressed her in her funeral gown tied her opened lower jaw with a handkerchief. They pulled the knot so hard that grandmother smiled in her coffin. I was prepared for the sounds of the nails going into the coffin. I was not ready for the sounds of rockets flying over Kyiv at 5 a.m. on February 24th. I was not ready for the sound of the air raid siren outside the window of my Kyiv apartment. I was not ready for my mother to spend 8 days under fire in occupied Irpin without water, gas, electricity, or mobile communications until she was evacuated. Most of all, I was not ready for several shells to explode 300 meters from my grandmother's house in Ovruch, where my father Victor now lives. Our neighbor's house was completely destroyed, and the roof of my childhood home was partly blown off, while all the windows were blown out. Dad called me and said,
Luda, listen to this sound.
It was the sound of my terrace windows being hammered shut with boards and cardboard. It was the true sound of the end, for which I was not prepared. I was not afraid at the age of 5, but now am afraid of nuclear war. Because the president of Russia, the country that attacked my Ukraine, shows all signs of that unauthorized behavior. I am afraid to fall asleep and never wake up. My brother Sergei, who is currently a surgeon on 24-hour duty at a hospital in Kyiv, told me.
In North Kazakhstan, every adult and child knew what dead hand was.
That was a system that could launch rockets at the enemy without human intervention, even if a nuclear strike in our direction had been inflicted earlier. As such, there was nothing to fear, but fuck knows if anything can stop it. P.S. My dad's brother, my uncle Valery, named after the great test pilot Valery Chkalov, now lives in Bryansk, in Russia. He and his family consider us fascists, and they support the Russian president in this war.